Okay, we are live. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Skagit County Track and Field Podcast. We are on episode 12. Today's guest, I'm excited about, a friend of the Valley, even though he is on the east side now. Marshall Lobbestael is with us today. For our listening audience, we asked Marshall to come on because Marshall has spent a significant portion of his adult life researching through trial and error and incorporating into his students' lives a specific type of philosophy and weight training, and that philosophy is to try to help his student athletes get faster. So I thought, from a coach's perspective, Marshall, you would be the perfect guest to have on for us, especially at this point in time in the off season, to try to shed some light and drop some knowledge on our county coaches, as far as what in the heck we should be doing in the weight room to try to develop speed. So I guess with that being said, thank you very much for taking time out of your day. I know you're on Christmas break. We appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, I'm pumped. Thanks for having me.
So a quick background on Marshall, and then I'll give the floor to you, Marshall, and we'll ask our first question. Marshall was a graduate from Oak Harbor, and he actually has ties to the county. Was a coach and teacher at Sedro-Woolley High School on 2 different occasions, and then family took him to the east side over to Sunnyside, where he's at now. But Marshall, I'll let you delve into that a little bit more. First question is our 2-minute drill. Can you give us the quick and dirty background on your competing and coaching career from the time you were a wee little freshman at Oak Harbor to where you're at now and what you're coaching?
Yeah, so I played 3 sports throughout high school, and then in the spring I was not a track and field athlete. I played baseball, and I was a slow 3-sport athlete, so I was not fast. I just kind of got by on playing a lot of sports. It was like the Larry Bird kind of 3-sport athlete, and I was good enough, and I got the chance to play football at Washington State, and trained there, on the football team, and then after graduating, I got hired at Sedro-Woolley to coach with Coach Ward, and that was in 2012 and 2013, and then from there went to Sunnyside and coached and taught, and then came back to Sedro-Woolley. That's where you and I first met and started coaching together, and was there with you and Coach Ward for a couple more years. And then, like you said, my family kind of took me back here, and now I'm back and was back as an assistant, and then my brother stepped down as the head coach, and now I kind of slid into that head coaching job. So, and really throughout that time of coaching, I always kind of was gravitated towards, and luckily enough, Coach Ward kind of let me take the off-season conditioning, strength and conditioning stuff. So been working in that really since 2013 after graduating. So
Yeah, and right now you're doing off-season stuff, obviously with your football guys, but can you kind of talk about the day that football ends, and not that we need a time capsule or whatever, but just what are you doing in the winter, and what groups of student athletes are you working with?
So we started, after school, strength program or whatever, and it was similar to what it was like at Cedro before we left. And it's kind of the bulk of it is football guys, and then we have other sports will kind of have some representation in that group. So right now we have a big kind of group of girls in there. We're double digits most of the time with the girls, and low teens of softball and some volleyball mixed in there, and then mostly football and those types of guys. So after the season's over, we usually take some time and depending on where we leave, do gear inventory and stuff for football. But then we start right away, and we will be in the weight room 5 days a week. But the way that we organize that is kind of whether it's performance days or your red days or your neural days. We go neural days Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then those are our speed and really kind of high. We're asking for a high output there on those days. So and then Tuesdays and Thursdays are more of it's interesting with the group. It's just more of like your recuperative, but we kind of slip in some beach bod type of stuff, and like, hey, certain people like, oh, like the football guys want to bench, so we let them, that's kind of the for the other guys, like, and for the girls, a lot of times it's hey, it's further range of motion push up maybe, or if it's dumbbell. For some kids, we have like kind of a dumbbell pit that a couple guys use, and that kind of thing. We'll do that stuff on Tuesday and Thursday. So
awesome. Yeah, and I think we're going to get into more of that a little bit later. So good. Go ahead, Jake.
All right. Well, this kind of shifts to coaching in the county, and as Johnny kind of stated, you came over from your time at at Washington State, and you were a Whidbey Island boy for at least high school wise, but you got to experience the county. So I would love to hear from your perspective, what did the county kind of meet and coaching in the county sort of bring to you in terms of your coaching experience? So what did you get from coaching in Skagit County?
I think well, the first time I was just fresh out of college, and I remember me and Coach Mundo would sleep in the weight room after football games. We didn't want to commute back to Oak Harbor. So like, yeah, I mean, coaching the county that first time, it was really fun because it was my first high school coaching experience, and all the coaches that I had met were super welcoming. Any questions that I had, they were fast to respond, open to, communicating. And that wasn't just from, Woolley. It was kind of around, the county, whether it was at the coaching clinic or before and after games, you kind of talk with other coaches. And then that second time when I had met Johnny, he had obviously had more ties in the county. And so that was fun just to listen to some of the other coaches and the history behind, like the Malvern Burlington game, and, like the flag on the bridge type of thing. I mean, that kind of stuff was cool for me, just being kind of close to that growing up, being on Whidbey Island, but then now kind of being in the county. So just that camaraderie amongst coaches was something new, because it was my first experience, and it was nice kind of having that be my first area of coaching. So.
All right. Awesome. Well, the second question I have is because when you kind of explained your own athletic path, track wasn't involved. So I know based on my conversations with Coach Lee, speed training and that kind of stuff is sort of probably like been a little bit more in your sphere. So like, how can track and field develop athletes for other sports like football, or like you were saying, in terms of your softball, volleyball? How does that work into sort of training athletes?
I mean, I think, well, first of all, I think that where I kind of became not obsessed, but I'm close to obsessed with, like speed development, is because I was so slow. And then going to college and seeing these guys who are just naturally fast, and then listening to them talk about other sports, but then watching them play other sports too. It's like the dudes who were the fastest were also, high performing in other areas, whether it was beach volleyball or basketball, and so I think talking to them, and like a lot of those guys ran track, a lot of guys, did hurdles or were sprinters or jumpers. So I think, just measuring the jumps, measuring your sprints, whether it's throws, I think that's super important for kids, because it gives them like a mark on how fast they are. And speed now becomes competitive, which I think is really cool. I think for a football guy, I mean, the old kind of Oregon teams where you see some of the running backs, just the way that they run, it's like, oh yeah, they're a track guy, and then I think it's for female athletes, it's the same. I mean, you see girls who can high jump, or girls who can, even triple or long jump. It's like that translates to volleyball or stealing a base in softball or whatever it is. But I think what's best, I think, is thinking back to how many times. First of all, I had maybe one time sprint my whole high school career, and it was on some one of my buddies like stopwatch, It's like, dude, you run like a 5.0, it was probably like 5.5. And then in college, I had 0 time. I wrote this down. I had 0 time sprints in college. And that was at a Division I school, with a lot of resources. So I think track develops athletes because it like you get a chance to time yourself, whether you're doing something like Feed the Cats or you guys sprint program, which is great. They have like a mark that they're accessing top speed on at least a weekly basis, and it goes to, if you want to be fast, you gotta sprint. And so I think timing that is key, and I think track does that. And then you're on a team, like guys ask me, should I do track or should I lift? And that's a tricky question depending on where you are and who the kid is. But I think, being on a team at your high school is super valuable for kids. Like you're with your buddies, you're with a coach who is a good person, a good mentor, hopefully. And you're doing something different than just your 1 or 2 sports that you try to specialize in. Like you're going out and trying a new event. You're getting trained in throws and sprinting, maybe. It's good for kids, I think, to do something different. And I think it develops them in that regard, is they're not specializing. I think that's kind of the push. Everybody kind of wants to do that. And I think track is a great way. If the program is good, it's a great way for them to mix up that training and go out and do something else. It's like, get out of the weight room. You're just in the weight room all winter, or you're in the wrestling room or the gym all winter. It's like, freaking go outside a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As fast as you can and get timed, So,
well, and I think selfishly, I always identify with like certain quotes or certain things that like I hear, but I heard Chip Kelly was like, I want my guys to run track, not because of the speed part, but because they're asked to compete every day. And that competition breeds a better athlete in a sense. So like, you can lift as much weight as you want. And obviously we brought you on here because we want to talk about your weight training, but I think like hearing that aspect of like competition being the thing. And I think that's why we push our kids for like, sometimes more toward wrestling, because it's that individual opportunity to like, the onus is on you, like, and you have to respond, and that makes a better athlete. So that was pretty cool to hear
yeah,
from
I think,
you.
if you just look at the blocks during a race too, or you look at the face of a high jumper or a thrower, they're they're locked in. Like they're in that performance zone, and it's nut cutting time and they're ready to go. They're not getting that, oh, well, yeah, on max day, like they're getting ready for a clean, or it's not the same, it's not the same. And when they finish the race, they got their whole team and the coach who's there, whereas in the weight room, it's like, I'm there and the music's too loud and they can't even hear what I'm saying. You know what I mean? So it's a huge deal. I think that competition is a huge part of it, because a lot of people, I think they don't want to admit it, but they'll shy away from racing someone because they don't want to lose. Mm-hmm. So like in the track meet, it's awesome for a kid to go out there and they're racing someone. It's awesome. So
yeah, before we get in to our next part, I just wanted to finish up. You told me a story one time, and sorry to put you on the spot, but maybe you can kind of talk about it a little bit more. But you had some football guys at the end of last season, and it was something to the effect that if you're getting recruited now as a football player or a volleyball player, whatever the sport is, like a lot of times football recruiting people will say, hey, do they run track? And if so, what is their time? And that time actually carries more weight now than, a kid's 40 time that he ran in PE, or, goes to see a specialist in the 40, because those 40 times have been so butcherized, and they're not accurate. And so now, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like more colleges are looking at track performances as like legit feats of strength, jumping, speed, whatever, in the recruiting process. Is that somewhat true?
Yeah, like 1,000%. So we had a guy who was a skill guy, and do you run track? And it was his first year to run track. In the winter, he was, they were talking to him and he was like, yeah, I run track. And they were excited. They wanted to know and nothing against the longer distances, but they wanted to know his sprint times and his jump times.
Mm-hmm.
And even one coach I was like, hey, I asked him, coach from a Division I school, I asked him, what about 300 hurdles? Because that's often like, yeah, it's the man's race, And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep.
he said, where we're at, like, I don't even know what a good 300 hurdle time would be. We kind of want his 100 and his jumps, which was interesting because a smaller Division I school a couple years before, when they were recruiting a guy out of Cedro, they wanted him to run the 300 hurdles. So I think there's some small hairs that are split, but they're definitely more interested in what their times are. I mean, we use a free lap we have a free lap, and so I was able to tell a guy, hey, this guy's like a 22 mile an hour guy, and they were like, okay, what's his 100 time?
Yeah.
And they don't really want to know what Uncle Joe has on his hand time. They want, like, hey, what's on athletic.net. So
yeah,
and that was kind of eye opening to me because it makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna have a fast thumb with the guys that I work with every day, whereas that athletic.net's a little different. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's good for us to know as track coaches too, that, it's more than just the track community that's looking at those performances. It's, if we're taking in kids from other sports, the goal is to get them more explosive, more dynamic, more fast. So those results, like, they're important, and it's, important for us to work with those kids, to help them, because that could mean, thousands of dollars essentially in tuition money or scholarship money. So,
well, the other thing too is, like, not go into this too much, but it's important, right? To me, is like, and you said this one time, it's kids in track will run track because they love track. And then I think you had 3 groups, but one of the groups was also they'll run track to get better at their main sport, whether it be basketball or football. And I think that sometimes would be tough, like if a football player was playing for a different reason. But also, like, what's best for the kid, like you said, like, get them faster. And knowing that as a track coach is awesome, because I think some coaches, whether it be football or even weight room coaches, they're just so wrapped up in, like, hey, what's their role, that they don't think about, hey, the kid's actually doing track so they can get better at football, but they can also help the track team,
Yep.
So like, football coaches need to chill out and then
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
be okay with that. It's like, hey,
one of my favorite conversations, I think it was last week, was we have a kid that's like, he's kind of middling on like defensive line, offensive line, but he just came up to me and he goes, Coach Grantham, I'm going to throw and I'm going to sprint. And I go, that's the best thing you could do. But I was like, I'm so excited that you're excited about those 2 things. So
yeah.
Okay, Coach Lobbestael, we're going to get into weight room, and more specific than weight room, speed development stuff, kind of strength and conditioning questions. So I guess the first question, just to kind of gloss over and be general on, is what are some general philosophies that you have about training in the off season, which is where we're at now? And, make this the 10,000 foot view. If you have different silos, maybe one is strength, one is power, one is speed, one is agility. I mean, whatever that is. What's just some general philosophies about strength and conditioning, and your views on how an off season program should go?
I think one thing I wrote down was I think kids should play other sports. I think if they can, they should play other sports. And then, having said that, obviously, if they're not, okay, then all right, what do we do, in the weight room? And I think if you're not playing other sports, then I just wrote down, do it. Like, do off season training. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that, but I would say general kind of 3,000 foot view would be, prioritize speed. And then from there, it's kind of the same things you'd prioritize in a workout and in a week is, we're going to prioritize speed, and then bounce and jump. And then we're going to lift safe and heavy. I think those are kind of the things that you could classify it as. And then based on the coach and what you have, it's like, hey, do Olympic lifts? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
and you start getting into those types of things. But I think those would be like, if you're going to train the off season, it's like prioritize speed, and then like I said, jump and bounce, and then safe and heavy after that, and then thinking of it in terms of you're not going to do those every single day. So then you kind of get into some of these cool philosophies of hey, we're going to program it so we have neural days, and we're going to not let today ruin tomorrow, and that kind of stuff. But with those kind of general four things, I think would be the priorities, at least looking at it
So,
from that view.
so if I'm a track coach and I'm running off-season weight room, if I'm hearing you right, maybe have these days where one day is tough, or I think you said earlier your inputs are high, followed by the next day might not be so high to try to allow for recovery.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can sprint, even though it's a weight training session, I can sprint, and that not only can I sprint, that's my priority. I should sprint first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then with my lifts that I pick, or the weight training, the resistance training stuff is stuff that's fairly general. So I think you said safe, and what else?
Safe and heavy.
Safe and heavy. Okay. Would that
And
be fair?
yeah. And I think and then you gotta be careful when you say heavy. I think because I should have added to this view is like if you're training kids in the weight room or even in an off season, you don't want them to get hurt doing your
Mm-hmm.
program. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're training them so they're better at their sport. So you don't want to jack them up so now their back's hurt or whatever, and they can't perform when it is time for them to play their sport.
Yeah.
So I think not getting them hurt probably is a key.
Yeah.
The
The key. Okay, so thinking about it from that big broad view, let's narrow it a little bit. Let's go into the resistance training side of things next. So let's put sprinting to the side. Let's look at the weight training portion of the off-season program. What are kind of your thoughts about that? I know you said keep it heavy, keep it safe. Is there anything you want to talk about in terms of specific lifts, rep ranges, anything like that, in terms of what a good program will have in the off season with weights?
well, and even the heavy thing, it's like we don't lift heavy every day. So we have one day which some people call like an athlete day, some people call it an X factor type of day, but one of our neural days is we call it, with the kids, we call it like explosive legs. And then our second day, we do essentially like a squat to pins, and we pair that with a single leg jump. And then our third day, it's all single leg, and we pair that heavy single leg with like a bilateral jump.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of alternating there. And so let's say you had 3 neural days or three leg days or whatever, which it's like, coach, what are we hitting today? It's like
Yes.
we say legs day. So explosive legs, that's stuff that is below probably 75% of what they can do with good technique. And then you and I talked about this a couple years back, but you're either loading or exploding is what we'll tell kids in the weight room. So that explosive leg day is like, okay, it's your weighted jumps, it's your dumbbell jumps, it's your lunge jumps, that kind of thing. And then that load day would be, like the Wednesday. Okay, and then we're loading up the safest, heaviest lift possible.
Mm-hmm.
So in your gym, that really depends on where you're lifting. I think the one that any track coach would benefit in researching is doing your own research on the split squat, the rear foot elevated split squat. And we've talked about this, but Mike Boyle has a good progression for that. But it's a single leg. You can go slow on the way down. You don't have to have a lot of weight to make it hard, to make it heavy. And so that would be a good one that I would say any athlete should definitely have in their program once a week is a heavy split squat. And then if your gym allows it, like doing something heavy bilateral, whether it's hex dead or squat to pins, I think would be what I've found as kind of the best for a big group of kids. I think if you have one-on-one, it might be a little different, but for a big group of kids, I think that's the safest that you can kind of load up on and keep everybody's posture correct. Those would be the threes: some explosive moves, a heavy split squat, and then if you can, heavy bilateral squat to pins or hex dead.
Yeah, that's great. I think there's still a huge portion of folks that are in charge of the weight room that are still stuck, a couple centuries back, you know, where it either looks like powerlifting or it looks like bodybuilding lifting. And the thing I've always admired about our talks together is you are very far removed from that and very progressive in your thoughts on that. And so, if you're training athletes, it's more about movement fluency. So, yes, you got to get them stronger, but those explosive lifts, and especially for a track athlete that's unilateral and not, bilateral, I think is huge in the development, especially the younger kids.
And that's something too that this year I realized looking at the program was like, if you're gonna go heavy on 2 feet, then you better pair it with a 1 foot.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
that
like
was
that.
me because I was like, oh dang, like we're doing, we looked at I looked at the ground contact time for some of our stuff. I'm like, man, we're not bouncy enough on a lot of this stuff, so like these kids they're kind of doing the same thing over and over. And they're working super hard, but it's like, I'm the idiot who's telling them what to do, but one of the biggest, I think, misconceptions too is like, and this happens with girls, it's like, well, the misconceptions of the weight room, like you said, it's bodybuilding or powerlifting. It's like, well, you got the people who, I don't want to get bulky, and I tell the kids this: look, I've been trying to get bulky for 34 years. Like it's just not super easy. You know what I mean?
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, I mean, like you want, but I think that misconception, and then like the misconception that if you go into the weight room, the person in charge, the adult in charge, is going to put 315 on your back and just have you, get wrecked under it. Like that's not athletic weight training. That's not what it is anymore. So, um, that's important that people know that. It's like you can do it athletically and safely. So,
Yeah. Well, and I think that carries up to the higher levels too. Like if you look at the body types of sprinters from the 80s compared to body types for sprinters now, I mean, it's night and day different. Now, granted, they were probably on some sort of performance enhancing drug back in the day, but yeah, the body type, the training is caught up, and we're no longer bodybuilders. We're athletes, which I think is pretty cool. I want to get in before I pass the mic to Jake here, real quick. Can you and understand most of the coaches on here absolutely know how to develop speed. That's their job during track season, but I'm curious to see what your speed training looks like when you have a big group of folks that maybe aren't all track people, and it's your priority. What does that look like in your program?
And in the winter, or
yeah, what are you doing for speed training? Is it, I mean, are you running tempo runs? Are you doing long, long, high intensity stuff? What does it look like?
So if we're in the weight room currently, and it's getting pretty cold out, so where we live, and so we're inside. So if we have the gym, we basically will rewrite the week based on what day we have access to the gym. So like the perfect week is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and early days. Well, if we have the gym, like last week we had it on Tuesday. So then we kind of rewrote the whole week so we could sprint on Tuesday. So what that looks like for us now is we'll go into the gym and speed drills, and then we'll sprint. And then we don't really have the time or the space to do the anything else, basically, like our tempo, our in outs, or any of our finishers. We don't do that in the winter. So we'll just sprint, then we go in the weight room and we'll kind of do everything else in there. So
you're doing a lot of acceleration stuff that's under what, 30 yards ish?
Yeah, and so right now, like we stretched it a little bit today, and we're kind of running into like the crash pad, so we're teaching the kids the hypotenuse so we can kind of run the diagonal of the gym to get into our longest. But it's all acceleration, and then like in the weight room, I mean, we have like this, we set up like a big circle in the weight room where we kind of set up like a hurdle situation. So we're doing like hurdle hops, kind of like an X Factor situation. But yeah, the only thing that we do for top end speed, well, we don't do any actual running for top end speed. In the winter. We just don't have the space. And if we say, hey, we're going outside, we'd have probably 8 kids who would be pumped about it, and then the rest would be like, oh, I gotta go.
It's 30 degrees out.
Yeah. Not
So,
gonna happen.
Springtime though, the non-track kids, if you've still got football guys in there, are you, once it warms up a little bit, are you hitting top speed stuff? Are you hitting some max velocity stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I stole this from you. This last year is we'll go a couple weeks on a 2-to-1 ratio, and then we'll go 1-to-1, and then really before we kind of have a like when your guys' state track is kind of building up, that would be like our last couple weeks, and then we'll usually stay 1-to-1. A lot of times we don't kind of go 1-to-2 from acceleration to top speed. Last year we just ended with another round of 1-to-1.
Gotcha.
But yeah, and that ended up being we were able to we alternated last week. We went 3 days, 2 days, 3 days, 2 days throughout the spring.
Awesome.
So
cool. Jake, you want to finish up under resistance training stuff?
Yeah. So what's your favorite odd outside the box training principle you're currently using? What have you found that, because all of us I guess get that like that thing that we feel like really sort of hits some points. So what's that thing that you found that like you feel really confident with in terms of training?
Yeah, I think, and I forgot to say this earlier, but I think keeping the reps low is important, and that kind of goes into so for me, the thing that's made the biggest difference is that idea of contrast training, whether it be French contrast, where you set up the whole circuit, and that stuff is really good, or if it's just a single kind of contrast that's a heavy lift paired with an explosive movement. That stuff's made the biggest difference for us, and we kind of do that even in the spring. In the summer, we'll contrast sprint outside, where we'll pull a heavy sled that it's basically a box made out of scrap wood filled with concrete that has toe straps tied to it, and the kids drag it, and then they'll drop it, take a couple deep breaths, and then they'll hit like a full sprint, whether it be a 10 or a 15. So like on an acceleration day, that contrast training has really made the biggest difference. And what's crazy is we've timed kids with and without that contrast, and they've nicknamed it, like they'll get a cheat pull or a cheat code pull in.
That's awesome.
We're timing. A couple of the vets will be over there like dragging these concrete sleds, trying to like get a little bit of that post activation potentiation going, and so that's made the biggest difference, and that carries over the weight room too. We use that in the weight room. It's like that contrast training has really been a big thing the last couple of years for us. So
that's really cool. I think about that, and like intuitively you would think, okay, if I do something heavy or something with resistance before I do something with body weight, well, then I'm going to be slowed down because I'm going to be friggin' tired and my muscles are going to be shot. But that post-activation stuff that you talked about is a real thing. And when kids figure that out, they're like, oh my gosh, it's weird. I mean, I don't understand the science behind it, but I know that it friggin' works. And I think I remember you telling me a story. You watched some old grainy ass video of a track athlete like in the 80s, and they brought they brought a squat rack out to the track, and he was squatting heavy as hell. And then right from there went into accelerations, and he was smoking fast.
And I forget the dude's name. I just looked him up a couple weeks ago because I was going through single leg stuff, and he has another video where he split squats and then goes into like moon jumps or like bounds,
single leg bounds. Yeah.
Mass and movement. I've constantly, like, when it comes to sprinting, it's mass and movement. You want to maximize the mass, we got to move it. So like, that's always a conversation of like, you have underdeveloped human beings. I mean, we have kids that puberty wise are not developed.
Yes.
And we're trying to provide as much mass as possible, but move it as quickly as possible. If we had kids that were 20 and 25, it'd be a whole different thing, right? Like their mass move, but we're constantly from a 14-year-old male or female to an 18-year-old male or female. I mean, it's a completely different thing, and it's such a challenging thing to go, I have a mass and I got to move it. What's the best way to do that? And it undercomplicates what we have to try to do on a constant state. I think it's amazing to me. We look at these like Olympic training phases and athletes and everything else, and they're matured. They're 25 plus year old, like that's the peak, right? And we get these like constantly changing phases of kids, and we have to build mass and move it. And it's just, it blows my mind. Like, we undercomplicate how complicated our job is on a basis that with kids that we don't get to choose who we get to do that with. So we're constantly changing it up, and like that's been one of the most fascinating things talking to you. I'm like, I always overcomplicate what is complicated, in the fact that we got kids that just, I got a 14-year-old girl or 14-year-old boy. By the time they're 18, it's a different mass. It's a different thing. And we're trying to solve a problem that's super complicated. And I think, again, it's mass and it's movement. How do I move that mass? And that's an awesome thing to constantly keep trying to solve the problem on that. French, contrast, weight, movement, all those things. It's super fun to like solve that problem.
Yeah, and it's different every year because you get a whole new batch of 14 baby deer who come in there. Wanting to sprint or whatever. But see, that's the thing with sleds that we kind of figured out it accidentally, I guess, is you guys have some prowlers at Cedar Woolley, right? And so we, using those was awesome. What at Sunnyside, we didn't have prowlers and we didn't have money to buy them. So my brother made these sleds, right? And he had 3 of them. And if you watch kids drag these sleds, they look like they're supposed to when they accelerate. And so that's what my brother and we were like, wow, this is the strength move. This is the power move for us. This might be better than split squat. This might be better than, because anyone can do it. A girl who's never seen the weight room, you put a bar on, in a front rack position or on her back, like it's going to be a mess, but she can hold on to these straps, and it's very simple. Hey, drag it from here to there. Well, then her body has to get in the correct position. Like her foot strike has to be in the correct spot in relation to her hips to move the mass forward, like you're saying. So what has been most eye-opening about the sleds is the mass and movement. Like they're moving this and you don't have to coach them at all, which for me is good because I overcoach. The more I the better. And that's the thing, is like you say, hey, you have 5 seconds to drag it as far as you can, take big powerful steps, and you say go, and like they do it the right way. And I think that's helped our acceleration the most because it's training them in that body position, and where it's like, I'm trying to tell them how to come out of a stance, and it's just like, I just am doing a terrible job. But then they get on a sled and they drag it, and it's awesome. So
Marshall, just one thing before we get to influences, and I did not prep you for this, but really quickly, you can even answer yes or no. Do you prescribe different lifts based on a kid's sport? So for instance, if you got a volleyball player in there, are you going to subscribe something different for her than a football player that came in on the same day?
in a perfect world, the answer would be yes.
Mm-hmm.
And the most common for me would just be flat bar bench versus either dumbbells or we have these catches that the kids stand on for like incline press spotting,
Mm-hmm.
but they can do like a really deep push up. That would be the one that we probably modify the most, is like a full range of motion bench versus straight bar bench. And then everything else isn't necessarily different. It's just modified.
Right.
So I'm trying to think. I mean, when we do like shrugs, I tell the girls that, they can do like a rotator cuff. I give them like a different rotator cuff, like external rotation they can do instead.
So for you though, if a female volleyball player comes in and you've got a male football player that comes in, you're not prescribing different programs for those two individuals. The days would be similar or the same in terms of, a lower body hip hinge movement. You're just doing variations of certain lifts. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. And
Yeah.
so I misheard you, but yep, 100%. So that we put the workout up on the board, and that's the workout. It's written so everybody could benefit from it, because the goal is speed, jump and bounce, and then staying safe and lift heavy. So yeah, that's the same for everybody.
Perfect.
So like on a split squat day, everybody's split squatting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Let's move into influences. Before we get to our rapid fire, just real quick, who or what have been the three biggest influences on your coaching philosophies and why? And this can be books that you've read, things that you've seen or watched, people that you've coached with. Who are some influences?
Well, I think, not to blow you up on your own podcast, but definitely I think you would be at the top of that list, just coming from not only the Valley, but then having the track and football background has really helped me just view the importance of speed for whatever sport. Basketball as well. I mean, your background in basketball as well has been huge. So, I mean, you're at the top of that list, dude, for sure. And then after that, I kind of have I wrote down more than three, but for different kind of sections, like my meathead kind of go-to guy is Joe DeFranco. And then the track guy, would be Tony Holler. And then kind of the guy that I test things against is Mike Boyle, just because he's been doing it for so long and trains so many different athletes. I think that's huge. So those would kind of be my top four, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, those are, other than your first one, the other ones are great. In terms, I've learned a lot from those three people too. Okay. Jake, are you ready for rapid fire?
Yeah, we'll go rapid fire. I'll start it out. All right. Sorry, I'm laughing about this. Most annoying accessory kids wear, either for workouts or football games.
This is going to be a 3-hour podcast.
Okay, now before you answer, okay, I need to tell people this is you're asking a guy that used to spray paint his shoes black, jet black, so that way he did not stand out from anybody else. So this is a perfect question for Marshall.
Okay. Skirts under football jerseys, like we have black home jerseys, guys who want to wear baggy t-shirts underneath. So I'm going to play this clip for my team as well, because we have a no skirts policy.
Good.
Football is definitely the skirt. Weight room, I cannot stand like and I won't give it its nickname, but that cut that goes all the way down the sleeveless shirt that gets cut where they show their cool, ribs. And lately, what's been bugging me too is in the weight room is not wearing shoes you can sprint in. I think that's Crocs. I kicked a kid out Crocs the other day. And I said, you don't even have athletic mode on. The strap is in your mouth. Man, get out.
That's awesome.
All right. Well, this is and we have a couple questions that are tied to our relationship with you and the people that we have sort of coached with and or been a part of. But what's your number one Dave Ward saying or quote? And Dave Ward is our current head football coach, was your head football coach, but I think we've been around Dave enough that we can appreciate some things about Dave. So what's your number one Dave Ward saying or quote?
One time Coach Ward, and I don't know if he remembers this. It was like my freshman or sophomore year. He got hit right in the junk like 2 times in one practice. And one of the things I love about Coach Ward and that I respect is he is very calculated in the language that he uses. And he did not cuss in this situation, but he got hit. I think the second time he was like, oh, he like turned around and he was like, it's like a magnet. That's one. And then one, just this isn't even one quote, but he has an unbelievable ability to talk to either one person or a large group of people while addressing the whole team.
Yes.
My sophomore year, we went to a 7-on-7, and I did not play well, and I was an emotional player, and I reacted poorly to not playing well, and he addressed the whole team and basically called me out in front of everybody without calling me out in front of everybody. And he has like that ability to like Jedi mind trick individuals or say something while addressing everybody that I really enjoy now looking back at it. And then those are probably the top two.
All right. Sorry. I'm laughing too much about the Dave Ward thing. Because I can see him halftime saying something, and I know immediately who he's talking to. And it's one of my favorite things about Dave. Because
there
drives a dagger, but it's like, I'm going to spread it like napalm. And it just
there's a time there where I thought we had 12, 13 kids on our team that had the first name we, because he kept saying, we got to stop doing this. We got to quit doing that. And I'm like, that's one kid that's doing that.
The one. Yeah. Well, it's good to know it's been a resident. All right. Yeah. My last one for me, and then Johnny will go. What college coach would you love to play for? You played at Washington State. If people don't know, you were a collegiate quarterback for a Division I program. What would be the one college coach that you would be like, God, I would love to play for them?
Man, that's a good question. I would have loved to play for Mike Leach, and he was on the way in when I was on the way out. So we met and talked. So I never, got to play for him. But Coach Leach would have been awesome. And then, the guy who always makes me laugh is the dude from, I think it's from Kentucky or Kansas, the big, huge guy with the mustache.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought that would be really funny to play for him, because a story that, I think that'd be really funny to play for that guy, just because hearing stories about how he like motivated his guys was interesting. But Coach Leach definitely top of the list. And the NFL would be Dan Campbell, no doubt. He's awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Since you've graduated from WSU, who is your favorite Cougar that has went through the football program? And again, that's since you left. Like maybe going on Jake's question, like who had been a cool teammate to have been with?
Liam, they had a tackle who played for Leach and just was a perfect stereotypical gross offensive lineman. I'm a big time lover of offensive linemen, just, obviously being a quarterback, but Liam Ryan had like the coolest, grossest hair. And just, he was one of those guys who like put eye black on and it just was like, smeared and disgusting. But he would have been super fun to play with because he's a passionate guy, and watching him play was a lot of fun. But then I liked watching the defense as well. Maybe it's because I was a backup a lot of times, so I was watching the defense. And like Peyton Pallure was another guy who was there so long that he's just like one of those all-time Cougs that you'd love to play for because he played super hard. So
Great. Okay, so favorite Marvel superhero?
that's a good one. Probably Thor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. You have two kids, one boy, one girl, and both of them are going to be three-sport athletes, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I hope, I guess.
Okay, so let's start with Maeve. If you could pick Maeve's three sports, which three sports would she do in high school? And then we're gonna move to Graham. So
Yeah.
Maeve is first.
Okay. Maeve. Fall volleyball. Her
Okay.
mom and I both love volleyball. Winter. I don't know if she's gonna catch on to it. She really loves cheerleaders.
Mm-hmm.
I could see her cheering, but I really would like her to wrestle. Because that sport's catching fire, and she, I think, would be it'd be fun to watch. And then yeah, in the spring, man. So my wife is a big track and field athlete, very talented, and then I have a baseball background, so I think track would probably win. In that, I think the girls would team up on me, and she would do track.
Yep. Happy
Yeah.
wife.
Yeah.
Good call.
Yeah.
Okay, what about for Graham?
Graham, he is a football guy, and I've tried really hard not to like, force
Push it
it,
on. Mhm.
push it on him, but he's a 2-year-old kid who, I mean, he wears one of those Franklin helmets,
Yes.
that just like makes him look like a bobblehead. So he'd be a big football guy, and then I don't know. I like him to wrestle in the winter, but then in the spring, I think baseball probably would be his
jam.
and that's just based on 2-year-olds.
You're not signing him up yet.
Yeah, I'm not talking about Randy.
Oh gosh.
Those are good questions.
Awesome. I really appreciate you, Marshall, taking time, and I want you to know that as much as you've said you've got some influence from me, man. I love talking with you about not only weight room stuff, but speed stuff and track stuff too. So I've learned so much from you, and I appreciate our friendship, and really, really am glad that you came on. And so we'll catch up this winter at some clinics, but yeah, I'm glad that you came on, and hopefully we're able to influence some folks in the county in terms of how to weight train for speed. So Jake, anything left from you?
Yeah, no, I think the best part of this conversation is that we've obviously had a spectrum of like track coaches, but and not that we're always like, hey, track's the only thing, but like I really appreciate, and I'm biased because I get the side conversations from Johnny, but like the understanding of speed and the importance of speed for high school athletes. And again, I went on a little bit of rant on like mass movement and everything like that, but like I just appreciate the coaches out there that understand it's not a track thing. It's a speed movement thing, and it's so beneficial. And it's so great to hear from a non-track coach about the importance of moving athletes. And so like when we hear weight training, there's so many coaches that are just so biased about weight training, and so hesitant to have kids lift weights. It's not about lifting weights. It's about moving people in the right way. And I to me, again, it's a track thing and a weightlifting thing where sometimes they get like ostracized on these two sides, and it's like, no, they match up, and it works, and it can benefit every athlete. And I really appreciate all the things you added to it, because the one thing you constantly stated was athlete, athlete, athlete. And that to me, Johnny and I are both on the same line. We want to coach athletes. I don't care what sport it is. I just want you to be athletic. And I think you shared a lot of things that were really awesome about being an athlete. And that's really important for people to hear and sort of build into their program. So
Appreciate it. I mean, you guys have doing a great job with the podcast and getting people kind of connected. And if you haven't checked out Johnny's the YouTube page that you guys do, is that public?
Yeah, it is. It's
yeah.
Well,
Dude.
to preface this, there's some cool stuff on there, but it's my athletic conditioning class doing it. So there's there's some stuff that will be refilmed and reposted, but yeah, it's a resource for whoever the hell wants to use it.
It's a perfect picture for high schoolers too, because you got dudes in there like giving weird faces, but that stuff is great. That stuff, if I would have had that, just that YouTube page, in 2013, I wouldn't have wasted 5 years or however long doing, stuff that I did back in the day. It's just a great resource. So I mean, you should put more plugs out for that, because it's a great page, man. So
cool. Well, I'm once it gets updated with some kids who look like they know what the hell they're doing, then we will we will plug the heck out of it.
Don't downplay the fact that there's some kids that necessarily don't know what they're doing, but are doing it. So that's what it should look like.
That's true. That's true.
We go to plenty of track clinics where like, hey, this is what the Olympic athlete looks like when they're doing this. And they're like,
right.
Hey, cool. I don't have any of those people.
None of that translates to our high school kids. Cool. All right. Well, thank you, Marshall. I appreciate you again, and stay in touch. Okay.
All right.